The first time I actually pet a dog, I was embarrassed. Because despite the fact that a human was walking it on a leash, my first question was to confirm with the owner that it was a dog. All the vids I'd seen on Galnet had been of dogs that were large and terrifying and barking, or large and obedient and adorable, depending on the agenda of the one who'd posted the video. "He's a breed called a Basset Hound," the human man told me. "They're renowned for their sense of smell and famous for being great trackers. I just love his ginormous ears." The dog's ears were comically large, and the human said he hadn't known why the ears were that long, just that he loved them. But so many people from other species had asked that he finally looked it up. Apparently, it was extra help for sniffing things out, wafting the scents towards the dog's nose. He also told me that the first time someone asked him if Max was a dog, he'd replied, "Either that or he's a raccoon but lied on his resume." But no other species understands that it was meant to be funny, so he told me now he just says that joke for humans. The dog was also 9 years old, I was told, and the owner noted the grey hairs that illustrated that fact, being much less intimidating than many of the dogs I'd seen in Galnet videos. I got past my fears and petted, and his tail started wagging. Oh, and of course the talented sniffer sniffed me, and his nose was wet. That was a surprise. The human laughed and reassured me, saying that was normal. My neighbour, Eleanor, had a breed that was common among off-worlders, a golden retriever by the name of Daisy. Eleanor had 3 young children and they all loved the dog. To see the little ones play with and pat the dog, watching Daisy wag her tail as she licked their faces, which they called kisses, and make them squeal about dog slobber, helped me be brave enough to ignore her giant teeth and claws and pat her as well. I learned the body language of their species quickly, and she's so happy to see me every time she spots me, that now I can't resist stopping to pat Daisy if I pass them on a walk. Daisy is exceptionally well trained, to me at least, so when she acted out of sorts one evening when I had stopped to talk to Eleanor, I took note and backed up. "What's wrong?" I asked worriedly. Daisy was moving back and forth, staring at the forest, barking. She was pulling at her leash, then stopped, looking to the forest and then to Eleanor, continuing to bark. I'd never seen her like this. "I'm not sure," Eleanor spoke, but didn't hesitate before crossing the empty street. I followed, curious. She hears something or smells something that's worrying her. I was surprised to see Eleanor pull out her pulse gun from her purse, but realised she was going to walk into the neighbouring forest. It wasn't horribly dangerous. We did live nearby after all, but there were predators that lived in it. My assumption was that if Daisy was concerned, that might be because there was one very close to where we were. As for why we were, in that case, headed toward the forest instead of away, Eleanor told me, "It's not just that I think she smelled a predator. She's seen Halika twice at night through a window and barked as a warning for it to stay away. This is different. I'm worried." Halika were, I've been told, bear birds. After looking up photos of both earth animals, I found it surprisingly accurate as a combination. If one of them was nearby and came too close to our village, they would allegedly run off if hit with a level 3 pulse. That didn't mean I wanted to test that theory, but I wasn't going to leave Eleanor and Daisy to pursue possible danger on their own. Even Daisy would be no match for one of these things if it attacked. There was no path, so we just made our way as best we could through the forest, led by a concerned and upset dog, glad the sun hadn't yet set. I eventually heard faint squealing and shrieking, the fur along my arms and back prickling in fear. "What is that?" I asked. "It sounds like something in pain." The human didn't answer, but instead hurried her pace, and the brush cleared as we closed in on a horrific sight. It was indeed a Halika. It had attacked 2 graslin, and there was blood everywhere. One was in his mouth, broken and dead, glassy eyes staring at nothing. My breathing sped up and I started to tremble. I couldn't help cursing repeatedly, but kept them at whispers. my instincts telling me to stay quiet. But my curses were thoroughly drowned out by Daisy's ferocious barking, no longer pulling at the leash, instead standing in a way that was both intimidating and seemed ready to charge. To my surprise, the Halika let out a rumbly growl, but took several steps in the opposite direction. Daisy took a few steps forward, continuing her barking frenzy, and the Halika fled, one graslin still in its mouth. "Oh no," Eleanor lamented. I followed her gaze, and my fur settled, my panic response slowly abating and my stance drooping, as I saw 3 extremely young graslin next to a bush. The babies were too young to know what had happened, only that the sounds were of panic and death, which had caused them to huddle together. The parents were protecting them, I muttered in comprehension. The forest was a wild land, and there were carnivores that lived here. I'd known that. Death happened here every day, even to young offspring, and without us the Halika likely would have devoured the whole family. But it was strikingly sad to realize their parents were gone, to know that they needed help or they would perish, to slow starvation. Glancing to Daisy, I was surprised to see her body language had clearly and rapidly changed. She was now whimpering, and as Eleanor took a few small, slow steps forward, I took in a sharp breath as she dropped Daisy's leash. The dog went over to the graslin, who was squealing in concern and fear, and immediately started licking them with her long pink tongue, continuing to whimper softly. Eleanor knelt down on one knee, looking over the babies with her keen eyes, and I asked, "Why is Daisy doing that?" "The same reason I'll call wildlife rescue," Eleanor answered softly, glancing up to me as she took out her communicator. "They're babies, and they're furry and squeaky enough for Daisy to know they need protection. She didn't lead us here because she heard the Halika. She came because she heard them." As Eleanor made the call, I watched in awe as the animal that had descended from carnivores, the dog I seen get so excited over a beef-flavoured bone that she'd practically been vibrating, fuss over the graslin, as if they were her own pups. Every once in a while, Daisy would glance at the dead parent that had been left behind, and then look back to the offspring. After a minute or so, they seemed to settle, and Daisy lay down, curling around them protectively. I couldn't take my eyes off the sight. Months and months of getting to know Daisy, and seen a few other dogs owned by humans in our village, and I'd never seen anything like this. But to Eleanor, it seemed to completely make sense. Something clicked with me in that moment. The pack bonding humans discussed, even joked about. This was part of what they meant. Simply hearing children of any species in distress, a human would rush to their aid, sometimes even if it was dangerous. All of a sapient species had learned that. But to see a dog do the same, to run towards the sounds of danger, and then start grooming these babies as if they were hers, this was something I never heard discussed by the humans, and strangely enough I realized it was because they considered it a matter of course. This was why they not only loved, but bonded with dogs. They were the same. Humans had explained to me that they not only trusted their pet dog around their children, but felt comforted and protected with them around. I hadn't truly comprehended it until now. The dogs became family, and now I knew how. I'd seen Daisy's concern from afar, and then her fearless confrontation of a predator to protect baby graslin, and it was exactly what a human would have done.